I have crippling depression.
Don't stop, we're in luck now. Don't stop, there's so much to be found. We can't find paradise. All we have to do is go, free your soul.
Hey guys, welcome to my review for Inio Asano's Goodnight Punpun, a coming-of-age seinen manga that was serialized between 2007 and 2013. Ever since I read Inio Asano's other work, So On, I've been very much looking forward to checking out Goodnight Punpun. Now I've read it, and I guess we can talk about it. Our story follows the life of a young man living in Japan, Punpun Ponyama. The series spans 10 years from when Punpun is a child in the 5th grade to when Punpun is a young adult. And throughout this time we spend with Punpun, we get to see him grow, make new friends, try out new things, and question if life has any meaning. So first let's talk about the first part of the series where Punpun is a child. Now he seems to have a pretty normal life for a kid in the 5th grade. Okay, he lives with his mom and dad and a bit later on his uncle. And you know, he goes to school, he has a group of friends like any other. And of course this new girl Aiko transfers to their class, and once he sees her it is love at first sight. The chapters that follow are some of the funniest I have ever read in any manga, because it does such a good job of capturing childhood innocence, and it mixes this innocence with these children discovering what sex is, and oh man, does hilarity ensue. Punpun also has this version of God who comes down and talks to him. It's all pretty silly shit, but what's so great about this is that all of these kids' reactions to everything that is going on in the world is so genuine and real. This is something that I loved So On for. Everything felt just super realistic. Punpun is no different, okay? It's the exact same. Every single character here feels like they've existed, like they could exist. And so interesting seeing this type of writing with children who are still learning new things about the world. It's also very relatable. You think back to the time when you were a child, you probably went through a lot of the same feelings that Punpun and his friends went through. And like I mentioned, just seeing these kids watching porn for the first time, it's really fucking hilarious. But all good things must come to an end, and as Punpun's childhood comes to a close and he moves into adolescence, he just has a hard time connecting with people, and it makes you feel really bad for him. But the series still remains a bit lighthearted. We still have some pretty funny moments. As you probably noticed, Punpun and his whole family are crudely drawn birds. Now they aren't actually birds, they are normal people, but from what I gather they're meant to symbolize how Punpun views himself, which is made a little more clear as his form actually changes throughout the series. But anyway, I feel like these characters being birds really helps out with the visual comedy, because some of the more absurd moments in the series really wouldn't work without it, and I think it really works for the better. But anyway, as the series continues and continues, some really fucked up shit starts to happen. The realistic story of a socially awkward teenager who quickly devolves into this monster of depression. I will tell you right now, this series is not for the faint of heart, okay? If it sounded fine before, oh, and a nice little coming-of-age story that's a bit silly and a bit awkward, that is not what Goodnight Punpun ultimately is. This series will explore some extremely deep and mature themes. Some incredibly dark things will happen to these characters, and you won't feel good reading this series. You really won't. And I felt bad reading this series with every single volume, and it got more dark and more depressing with each one. I just felt horrible reading it. I felt so bad for these people, but at the same time I knew these people were making horrible mistakes, and I was just dreading to see how it would all end. But I couldn't stop reading because, like I said, the writing in this series is so excellent. Everything feels so realistic. That's one of the reasons it feels so dark and depressing, because everything that happens in this series happens to people in real life all the time. Stuff like this may have happened to you before. Maybe you can relate to it. Maybe you know someone who has been affected by the things that happen in this series. Even the more out there things that happen in this series, they're still realistic things that could happen to people. And that is a really scary thought. And I think the way this series makes you feel is just a testament to how good the writing and storytelling is here. Now, the series doesn't just follow Punpun, though he is the main focus. We also get some brief looks into the lives of other characters, such as his parents, his uncle Yuichi, and some of his friends from elementary school. I really like how all of these relate to each other and how they come together in the end. The ending, which I obviously won't say anything about, but it's It's certainly a thing, oh man. The final few volumes in this series are unlike anything I have ever read. They are certainly a trip that is definitely not for everyone. I can't stress this enough. If you're one who reads manga as a form of escapism, someone who reads it to enjoy themselves, stay the fuck away from this. Alright, let's talk about the characters. Not really much to say here, because like I stated before, they all just feel like real people. Punpun as a character really feels like he represents a lot of people when they were his age. And it's really interesting seeing him grow up, change as a person, evolve as a person, and sometimes devolve as a person. And it's also interesting seeing how all the people in Punpun's life play a part in this. And I don't really want to talk about many of the other characters who play big roles in the series. I think it's something you should really experience for yourself. There's a lot of really genuine and realistic relationships between these characters, but there are also some that aren't very genuine, which unfortunately reflects some of the more negative aspects of life. They're all extremely complex people, people who may seem fine on the surface, but once you learn more about them, you realize that things aren't all sunshine and rainbows. The characters here just work so well at breathing life into this story, and I feel like we get just the right amount of development for each character that when it's all over, everything just feels very satisfying. Now, the art in Goodnight Punpun is pretty unique in that it's some of the most detailed art you will ever see in the manga, and there's a reason for that. Inio Asano, for all of the backgrounds in this series, actually used photography. They went out into the world, took pictures, converted them to black and white, and then printed them off so that he and his assistants could add even more detail to the backgrounds. And for all of the indoor backgrounds, because it's a bit harder to take pictures in confined spaces, they used 3D modeling software. I thought this was a really cool way to do it. Obviously, it's not going to be for everyone, but it really added to the realism of this story. And of course, as always, the characters look absolutely wonderful. I mean, Inio Asano has obviously got his style. They're all extremely detailed and very well drawn. And then you have Punpun and his family, which are obviously an extreme contrast to the detailed art. I feel like he saved a lot of time by choosing to make his main character like this, but it just works so well. There's a lot of charm to Punpun's character design, so some really funny moments come from it, like I've mentioned before. And like I also mentioned, it's really interesting to see his form change throughout the series as he has shifts in how he views himself. Just a really interesting form of storytelling. And just a heads up, there's a few bit of dongs in this series, okay? A good bit of sexual content. Most of it doesn't involve children though, so if you weren't too big on The Girl on the Shore, I don't think you'll have that much of a problem here. So there you have it. Those were my thoughts on Goodnight Punpun. Now, this series is not for everyone. It can get very depressing. It's definitely not the most uplifting thing you'll read. It may oftentimes be very difficult to read, but I also think that if you can put up with it, it is one of the best things to read. That's right, we give Punpun a 10 out of 10. This has quickly become one of my favorite manga series of all time. And if you don't mind feeling suicidal for a few weeks after reading it, I really can't recommend it enough. And thankfully, you can pick up the whole series from Viz Media in these lovely signature editions. 7 of these in total, some really excellent quality. Definitely something worth checking out. So there we go. Thank you all so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts on Goodnight Punpun in the comments below, and I will see you guys very soon for my review for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Steel Ball Run.
We will fight for love and glory. We will live to tell the story. There is nothing we can't live through. Nothing ever dies. We will rise again. Don't stop, we're in luck now.